Shalom, everybody. Welcome back. We have insights on the Parsha of the week, Parshat Vayeira. And before anything else, just a reminder, if these classes have been inspiring you and you feel they can inspire others, please share these classes onto your status. This week's Parsha, the birth of Yitzchak. And Rashi says, again, like last week also, that when he was born, it was born through laughter, tzchok. He's called Yitzchak because of the tzchok. Which laughter? Number one, the laughter of Avram Avinu. That when Hashem told him that at your age and Sarah Imenu's age, you're going to have a son. So he was filled with laughter out of joy and thanksgiving. He said, Mimilel, who would imagine that Avram at this age and Sarah at this age will have kids? Thank you, Hashem. He was so happy out of joy and thanksgiving. And this week's Parsha, Rashi adds that when Yitzchak was born, a lot of tzchok was in the world, a lot of laughter. Many barren women gave birth also, and many childless, and there were a lot of easy births. There was a lot of simcha in the world when Yitzchak Avinu was born. So Yitzchak is called Hashem Tzchok, the laughter, okay? So this is something very powerful to show you, that simcha is associated with Yitzchak. And now Yitzchak, as we know, he's called Gvurot Yitzchak, the judgments, the harsh judgments of Yitzchak and the dinim, Pachad Yitzchak, the fear of Yitzchak, meaning that in the Kabbalah, we know that Yitzchak connotes harsh judgment and severity, right? He was blind and he was locked in a room and was able to serve Hashem like that with such a severe existence and a severity in challenges, and yet he was able to serve Hashem. And always, like we said, Yitzchak is associated with the judgments. That's why there was the binding of Yitzchak according to the Kabbalah. On the simple reason, Hashem was testing Avraham to sacrifice his only son. Now, according to the Kabbalah, why specifically this son called Yitzchak was the one being binded? Because Yitzchak represents judgment, severity. That his judgments needed to be put on check. That was the idea of binding Yitzchak, his arms and his legs, to give a limitation to how much he's willing to go, how far he's willing to go to serve Hashem. In other words, Yitzchak on his part knew no bounds to serve Hashem. Whatever is needed, even self-sacrifice at the highest of levels, I'm willing to go. But this type of judgment is severe, and also it promotes severity in the world. As if people begin to say, if you can't meet the standards of serving Hashem like Yitzchak can, so you don't deserve salvation. So that's not good. That's not good for the rest of the people who are not Yitzchak type of people. Yitzchak type of people, great, they can serve Hashem in severity and judgments, but the majority of people are not like that. And if now Yitzchak succeeds in serving Hashem with extreme judgment and severity, so then it loses out on the rest of the world. Because now it's compared to, if he's doing at that level and you're not, you don't deserve Hashem's loving kindness. That's why the binding was needed to keep Yitzchak into check. Furthermore, Nosson writes this down in Likutey Moharan, that Rivka was the exact balance of Yitzchak. Yitzchak, as severe as he was in his judgments and his serving Hashem through Midat Adin, and that's why again he liked Esav. He was able to be fooled by Esav because Esav went in extremity. How do you give tithe on melach, on salt, etc.? All these type of extreme questions, thus fooling Yitzchak. Rivka was the exact opposite. She was the balance. If you noticed, on Shabbat morning, we sing Nishmat Kol Chai, and you have there a stanza, Bifi Yesharim Titromam Uf Sivtei Tzadikim Titbarach, and it spells out, Bifi, the third letter, Yud, Yesharim, right? I think Titromam, it spells out Yitzchak, Bifi Yesharim Titromam, Uvtzel, Bet U, Vav, Bet Tzadik. So you keep on going, the third letter of each stanza spells out Yitzchak and Rivka, right? Bifi Yesharim Titromam, it goes, you take each stanza, there's 4 stanzas there, you have Yitzchak and Rivka. And that's specifically in Nishmat, because this is the greatest praising Hashem, that as severe as things could be, in Midat Hadin being executed in life, judgments, there's this balance of Rivka. And we give thanks to Hashem that He doesn't deal with us based on just the attitude of judgment, which is represented in Yitzchak, but as a balance of Rivka. That's why we have this every Shabbat morning in Nishmat Kol Chai, hidden and mentioned by hidden format, the name of Yitzchak and Rivka, okay? So all this is saying that Yitzchak connotes severity. So the question is, Where's there room for simcha here? You say Yitzchak al Shem Batzchok, and there's a lot of simcha in the world, and the result is a son who's very severe, very tough. So decide. It's happiness, so happiness is happiness. And yira, fear, is like fear and trepidation and worrying and being serious and everything. So decide. How could you have the same person having two extremities? So the answer is, like Rabbi Nachman teaches in part 2 of Likutey Moharan, lesson 17, that to come to true fear of Hashem is specifically through simcha. To explain, Rabbi Nachman gave this lesson in Likutey Moharan part 2, lesson 17, how the way to tap into the yirah, the fear of Shabbat, because in the word Bereshit, you have a combination, as mentioned in the Tikkun Zohar. One of the 70 combinations of Bereshit is Yireh Shabbat. Yud Resh Aleph Shabbat. Those are mixing around of the letters of Bereshit, as if to say Shabbat is the source of Yirah. So Nachman, lesson 17, part 2 says, but the key to coming to this fear is dafka joy. And it's an amazing musar. So just let's tell the story and then we'll go back to this afterwards. After Rabbi Nachman gave this lesson, he asked Rav Nosson, are you happy on Shabbat? And Rav Nosson answered to Rabbi Nachman, sometimes I have what's called a frumkeit, a frum religious arousal, a spiritual arousal on Shabbat. And Rabbi Nachman said that's not the way. The way is simcha. Simcha is the key to tap into the fear behind Shabbat. It's an amazing concept. And then the conversation continued, that Rabbi Nachman read his mind, and he said, now you have to have what to worry about. And Rabbi Nosson said, he read my mind exactly, because now I was wondering, how am I going to be happy if I'm not happy? So then he told Rabbi Nachman, at least I want to be happy. So Rabbi Nachman said to the people at the table, you heard what he said? He said correct. And Rabbi Nosson said, in other words, even if I can't actually be happy on Shabbat, I know I want to be, and I express my wanting to be. So this is that conversation associated with that. Rabbi Nachman's insight, true yirah, comes from simcha. This is such a chinuch and education also in children. If you educate children, oh, don't do this, you can get punished, and this and that, and the whole time is the attitude of don't do this, don't do that. So you give the children a negative attitude. As opposed to what? As opposed to giving a positive attitude of the Torah, telling the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Avram Avinu, Yitzchak, and the whole Torah and the stories, and our obligation and our mitzvah to connect to Hashem, and the good side, and then within that to say there's punishment though, if you don't follow, you get punished. It's after you've gave the background of something positive and good, and in that you will feel the fear, that's more lasting. Because you've shown the child that there's something good out there. There's going to be punishment if you don't follow, but in the main, it's good. It's a benefit. It's something good and positive. As opposed to don't do from the beginning, hitting and smacking and panic and fear and trepidation. That's not the way. That's what Rabbi Nachman's saying here. That true yirah comes through happiness. Yitzchak Avinu also, we have a misconception of Yitzchak being like, if you just look at how Rashi, just on the plain meaning, expresses, in other words, looking at Rashi without the background from the Talmud, the Midrash, the Zohar, the Kabbalah, and Chassidut, where you see the positive aspect of Yitzchak. If you just look at Yitzchak, Rashi dry, so you get a negative picture of someone who's just dinim and severe and everything. But when you look at the whole picture of what Yitzchak really is and how he's necessary, and the positive part, then you see that not necessarily was Yitzchak in a negative attitude. He was someone built of simcha. And the simcha leads to the fear that he had. It's an amazing concept. That even fear of punishment, and all the more so fear of Hashem's greatness, are both through simcha. That's how it should be. And it's in a verse. Rav Nosson brings this verse many times. Vegilu bir'ada. It says twice in Tehillim. Ivdu et Hashem. Right? One it says, Ivdu et Hashem besimcha, Ivdu et Hashem beyirah. Vegilu bir'ada. One says serve Hashem with simcha, one says serve Hashem with fear. How do you make them relate? Because they're really one and the same. You serve Hashem with joy, that leads you to serve Hashem with fear. Okay? When the positive comes out and is expressed, so then there's proper fear of heaven. Rabbi Tzvi Rosenfeld, he was one of the Breslov pioneers who brought Breslov Chassidut and teachings to America. He had an amazing attitude with his students, getting his students to commit to Torah observance. He would never hit them on the head of the punishments. He would express the power and the beauty and the positivity in serving Hashem. And the children and the teenagers on their own would see that it was so good, so powerful and positive when you open their minds to what it says in the Gemara and the Midrash and the Zohar and the Kabbalah about the greatness of every tiny good deed that a Jew does. They would be wow and be amazed what a little thing can do. So on their own, they began to drop doing negative things. If it was transgressing on Shabbat or other things which were not according to Torah law, on their own, they felt that they made the initiative to fall off. He wouldn't say don't do this, don't do that. He would reveal the positive, and then through that they would understand the negative, obviously. And on their own, they took the initiative to stop. This is true Yira coming about through joy, and this is why Yitzchak, as severe as he is, he's rooted in joy. Tzchok. Whether it was the joy of Avram Avinu or the joy in the world when he was born, that is the root for the byproduct of the fear, the pachad of Yitzchak and the gvurut of Yitzchak, and it made it that it was tempered. It wasn't unleashed and unlimited. The Akedah happened due to him being rooted in tzchok, and also Rivka being there to balance his severity. That was a gift thanks to him being born out of joy. So what comes out of this, all this idea, is that a person has to work a lot on simcha, because simcha, like Rabbi Nachman teaches in lesson 17, part 2, is the key to yirah. You want yirat shamayim? You want fear of heaven? If you think, oh, I'm a sinner, I'm a transgressor, please forgive me, and you start with that attitude, you're going to fall off very quickly. As opposed to, you come to Hashem and work on the simcha, you build the simcha, so then the gift, the byproduct is that you come to true yirat shamayim. May we be zoche to be students of Yitzchak Avinu, of the tzchok, the laughter and joy, bring us into the true fear of heaven. Shabbat shalom barach.